Thank you everyone for coming. This talk is called Building a Data Platform as a Single Source of Truth. However, I think this talk is not exactly an AI talk, although we are here at the AI event. But this talk will give you a look into how organizational change looks when it's happening, and since you are probably all of the people who are currently trying to drive the change in your organization to push the adoption for AI and to find the proper use cases, this is one story similar to that, and I think you will find some conclusions useful in your work, especially with people who are the main stakeholders of your work, but maybe do not understand exactly what could be the benefits and what could be, the upsides of your, proposals. So this is me. I'm currently working as an engineering manager in Foursquare. I'm leading the movements team, and the movements team is, doing heavy lifting, transforming geolocation data into behavioral patterns of the user's devices. Basically, we are computing if devices are moving or are they still. I don't want to, bother you with that anymore. But I think about this talk, and to give some credit to myself, I'm building data platforms since 2016, and also working remote as well before COVID, before it was cool. So I'm really proud about that. And I want to kind of set up the context about this whole situation that I was in 2016. I was working for the online casino at that moment, and the casino had very, very complex gaming platform. So when I say a gaming platform, you can understand that as a part of the system which is responsible for everything that players are doing, and also everything that the back office is doing, and everything that finance and controlling are kind of consuming. So it was very, very complex system. And back then, there was only one data science guy, amazing person, studied in Canada, PhD, worked for Army of Singapore for a long time. So really, really knowledgeable guy. But even that kind of a person couldn't simply push, the need for better analytical approach to making decisions. Even that person needed support, needed a proper team behind it, and I would say even more important, needed time. There was clearly a cultural barrier because teams were very skeptical of computed data. Basically, they didn't trust in the results that we were supplying to them, and every team kind of preferred their own analytics. So if you were in the marketing team, you had your numbers. If you were in, business intelligence, you had your own numbers. And then sometimes those numbers weren't matching, and then, that's a problem for any business that wants to become healthy. And here comes data platform as a single source of service and a single source of truth. And the main vision behind this was to have a data platform in the middle, and basically every other team in the organization should be a consumer of the data produced by the data platform. Now, what does it mean? It means that if targeting and attribution, they are following their campaigns, data platform should be able to provide them with information and with the reports on how successful those campaigns are. On the other hand, finance and controlling as one of the major customers of this data platform should be able to know that all the expenses and all the costs and all the money in the casino is reconciled, and everything is what they have in their sheets is basically the truth. Also, customer support, even VIP management. So casino had that nice kind of tracking that when they realize that somebody is, maybe becoming a VIP, so basically they are gambling a lot, even they are in somewhere in Germany, we send them, for example, first a pizza somewhere in Germany, and then they are thrilled how we are treating them very nicely, and then they spend more money, and then over the years we send them to watch the game of, I don't know, Manchester United at the Old Trafford or something like this. So it's a lot of money. But for that, you need to have a single source of truth, and you need to have data platform that doesn't lie to you, that's computing proper numbers, right? And there is quite a distance to run to achieve this, and there is really you need to put some effort. This is, as I said, this is mainly like a soft talk, but I am a technical person, so I need to inject some of the technical aspects to it. So here you can see in the upper part of the picture, there is like a gaming platform, and below there is a data platform. So I want to, what does this picture mean? It means that we have like a number of microservices which were implemented in Java, Python, Kotlin, and Scala, and maybe some even other languages. And they were all communicating with each other over RabbitMQ. So, vast number of messages were running over RabbitMQ, and everybody was kind of publishing and consuming those messages. Here below is a cloud-native data platform, everything in AWS, using AWS Batch, Lambda, S3 for storage, I don't know, Athena, Glue, EMR, Redshift. So everything that we had on our disposal, we were using back then. But the real problem here was, how do we get everything that is happening in gaming platform, how do we get it into a data platform? And it took us some time. It took us, I think, a year and a half to get there, to get to the proper solution. But you see, the objective was to move the event store data to S3 for cloud-based ETL processing. So this is the first time I'm mentioning the event store. Why I'm as a term. So because the gaming platform was implemented in CQRS way, using event sourcing, using Axon framework, Java framework back then, and the events that were happening were all stored in different event stores. So first, to define what's the event. If a user logs in, that's the user login event, for example. If a user logs out, that's another event. If user clicks to kind of play a game, imagine like that a slot game, and you are kind of pulling the lever, that's one event. If user withdraws money, it's a withdrawal requested, withdrawal actually happened, or put some deposit, that's also an event. So basically everything that user does, regardless if it's the player, the customer, or back office user, or some kind of a back office is kind of a first level support people employed by the casino. So everything is the event. We had the setup. So basically, why is this important? The events are important because the events are happening in the moment. That's the event in the system describing that exactly that action happened in the moment before. So for us, it was, the way of thinking was, we are going to track the events, and we are going to take care of what's happening in the system, and that way we are going to have the complete picture of what's happening in the casino. However, having all those microservices over there, we had a number, like there was 80, 90, maybe even 100 microservices running in casino back then. Some of them, and I know this is not a good practice, but theory is one, practice is something else. Not all of those microservices were using their own databases, luckily. However, more than one microservice has a different idea of what the event store should look like and what the data is inside the event store should look like. So we said at the first, we are not going to do that. We are going to read from RabbitMQ because in any way, everything that's happening in casino happens in the RabbitMQ. Do you hear me? No. Oh, it's the red light. Maybe the battery is. Okay. Should I continue?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'll continue, and when we get the, I'll be louder. So we said we are going to follow everything that's happening in RabbitMQ, and we are going to capture all those events, and that's going to be the full picture. So what we have here is the main RabbitMQ, which is publishing to, I don't know, 50, 60 microservices. Everything's listening over there. However, that RabbitMQ is also kind of fanning out to two different smaller RabbitMQs, which are kind of, auxiliary rabbits, because they have less important microservices over there, and those microservices are listening to those auxiliary rabbits. However, it happened that I was on call when on Friday, a good friend of mine and a colleague made the configuration change and onboarded himself altogether with 100 more people and went to Cuba for a company event. Unfortunately, I stayed at home, and my on-call week next week was a nightmare. That was the worst week of my life, because he didn't tell me that he created the configurational change. And on Monday, when somebody from back office came to me and said, "Hey, back is not working," I saw a blank page. And I said, "Oh, I know what's that. That's some of the queues on RabbitMQ are stuck. All I need to do is go there and pop the message, and everything is going to be fine." And then I went there, and I realized that the microservices that we have, so the data platform is owner of that service, that is consuming events from the RabbitMQ, it needs to have 3,000 or 4,000 of messages in every moment in its queue. However, at that point when I went there, it had 30-something million of messages. And because of that, this rabbit couldn't work, because the queue was too big and the rabbit was dying over there, right? And then the main rabbit said, "Hey, my consumers are not working very well, so I'm going to go into something that is called control flow mode, and I'm going to slow down." So the whole website and everything slowed down, and the customers were not able to deposit, and were not able to, withdraw money and everything. So our idea was, it's good to listen, send to Kinesis, and then through Firehose right to S3. After this one, we had like a 4 or 5 hours of data loss. We had, I don't know how many hours of downtime. So it was actually terrible. And it happened on Thursday also, but we then knew what's happening. So we immediately purged the queue and lost some more data. And that was clearly not the way to go forward, because something here wasn't working as it should. As I said, there was around 90, maybe even more different event types. And the size of the data was roughly 70 million events per day. Over 90 million events on a peak days, like, I don't know, over Christmas, for example. I don't know what's with the people on Christmas, but they are really gambling a lot. I guess that there are, lonely people who are gambling on Christmas. I don't know. And the size was 2 or 3 gigabytes of compressed data per hour. Now I understand that today that's not a lot. That's like 30 gigabytes on per day, I think, or something like this. No, more than that. But it's not a lot for today's times, but back then it was a lot. And we had roughly 7 to 10, I'm not sure, different event stores. And in those event stores, the data that we decided we are going to read, those events that I were mentioning, were XML, JSON, sometimes compressed, sometimes not compressed, sometimes it was some kind of binary stuff, sometimes it was pure text. So it was really a pain. So I want to tell you what we did is that we wrote basically a Python tool that works as DBT. You all heard about DBT, and basically reading from the database and publishing wherever you need it. So we wrote DBT before DBT existed. And it was a Python script that was trying to deserialize Java serialized objects. Not a fun thing to do, but now when somebody asks me what I'm the most proud of, this is probably the thing that I'm the most proud of. And at that moment, I think that was the moment when we actually made the cultural shift in the company, because we had a massive problem. We had a massive crisis. Never before happened that the casino had a downtime of that significance. And we definitely lost money during those 5 or 4 days. But our response was what actually made the difference, because we acknowledged that our solution doesn't work. We acknowledged that even if it does work, it's maybe too risky, too aggressive for the gaming platform, because we are kind of latching ourselves on their architecture, on RabbitMQ. And from people not believing data platform numbers, we, implementing the other solution, we came to the moment when we had our first fully trusted customer, which was our finance team. And I want to explain why I think that was very hard at that moment, very painful experience for us. But it was, I think, if it didn't happen that way, we wouldn't get here to be recognized as data platform champions. The reason for that was that the finance, they are really pain in the butt about where the money is. So they had their own data sources, and they were comparing their data sources with ours. And it happened, many times that we have like 12 million of euros, turnaround revenue, whatever. And then somebody from finance comes to us and say, hey, we are missing 20. Or we are missing 40 euros somewhere, 36 euros. And for me, like, in 12 million, where will I find you, your 20 euros? And then we realized that the original solution sometimes had the networking glitch. So a one batch of, 2 seconds, 3 seconds didn't get recorded on S3. So we said, no more. We attached ourselves to the databases. So in order to be, again, defensive towards the production system, we didn't touch the production databases. We read from the slaves, and we transformed all that data from the gaming platform into the cloud. Especially this GDPR moment in 2018, that was, I think, if nobody believed us until that moment, not nobody, but if anyone didn't believe us until that moment, they had to after that moment. Because, as I said, the gaming platform and the backend engineers, they were so proud that they built the system in that way so that they can do a replay of everything. And then when GDPR kicked in, Casino was already 6 or 8 years old, and the requests from users start to come in to ask something like, I want my full transaction history from the beginning until present day. And then these guys from the backend found themselves in a problem because the event stores were so big that already for some time they had to archive parts of the event stores. So basically what they had in their system are event stores that are holding only 6 months of information in order to be able to run the system. And then data platform came in and basically become the only team in the organization that actually can do the full replay from the beginning of Casino to the present day. So what's the takeaway from here? In order to succeed in your goal, maybe you need to have a crisis first. You have to you have to solve the problem. However, I think the very important part of it is how you respond to the problem, and how you acknowledge what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. And it's useful if you have something like GDPR that kicks somebody else between the legs and makes them understand that they do not have a system that they think they have. and then you come in and save the day, right? So this is the whole evolution and about this is the expression that I hear very often. This is data democratization. I don't know. I don't buy it as a expression, but this is basically how I'll explain what's behind this. It's in the beginning we had one data science guy and we have one data engineer. One data science guy was running around, running all the analytics, trying to be clever about who wants to hear what and how to present them in a PDF. Somebody wanted like the Excel sheets. Somebody wanted slides. It was pain for him, right? And one data engineer who was good enough to set up the beginnings of the data platform in AWS. And then we got the data engineering team with 2.5 engineers. We then grew the data science team from 2 data science, data analytics guys to, I think, 10. And then we basically, after some time, after we realized that we are the main guys, that we own the data in the organization, we dispatched those analytics people into all the teams that you saw in the one of the first slides. So basically it was the core team, one data science guy and data engineers. We were the core data platform, and all other analysts and scientists were one in marketing, one in sales, one over there. And basically they were envoys for us. They were discussing things with business. They were asked questions, they were asking questions, and if we didn't have the answer at that moment, we built the answer. So we built all kinds of reports, we built the APIs, and we basically worked in that way so that we build a platform and we expose all the data that is needed for those envoys to actually consume the data in a way they need it. In the slide before, this one, Sisense. I don't know if anybody heard about this one. That's something that Casino was using at that time, but you can basically understand it as a Power BI or Tableau or something like this. So we basically exposed all of our data through Sisense, but also there were APIs that more technical people could access data. And having problems in the beginning, that's why I was so I wanted to emphasize that your response to the problem is very important for the adoption of the solution that you are suggesting. We wanted to build a data platform service with minimal downtime. Why? Because there was sometimes 2 of us, sometimes 3 of us, and it's a terrible thing to be on call 24/7. Some of you may know that, but it's terrible to be awakened during the night, and especially in this case, we were kind of bounded by, we had all of our computations had to wait for 1 day to finish and had to be performed before, I would say 6 a.m. or something like this, before Sisense starts pulling in the information that we computed. So if we were too late with providing the results, then people from finance who are coming into the office at 8 a.m., they don't need to come at 8 a.m. They can come at 12. And if we mess up something during the night, then we probably wasted them a couple of hours in the morning. And we didn't want to do that. So we built something that I'm also very kind of proud of. We called it self-healing system. So I want to explain what is this. It's the system that was able to recognize that if some of the batching from the event stores went wrong, it was able to redo it and to fix it. Basically, that would solve only a certain amount of problems, like if there was a network glitch or it was, I don't know, a database from which we are reading didn't have all the data that we wanted at that moment or something like this. So maybe replication from master to slave was too slow or something like this. However, this didn't solve the problem of if something is really wrong with the data. For example, if gaming platform team changes some of the events and breaks the contract between them and us, then this doesn't fix it because data in the database is looking different and we cannot consume it. Then we have to really jump in and tweak it a little bit, deploy the new version, and then we let it again pick up and correct itself. And this one, I think it's maybe the most important. That's the building trust. I said in the beginning, people didn't believe in numbers. That's fine. Over time, you present the numbers. Hopefully, time proves you are right, and they trust you in that sense. However, building such systems, I think the easiest way to build trust is rapid incident resolution. And your response to when something is wrong, your response and the way you respond to that incident, that's the the real trust builder. So what we really wanted to achieve here is that we actually, as a data platform, we didn't have to be, but we often were more responsive to incidents than actually guys from the backend, from the gaming platform. Because if they have an incident, then people cannot play, right? People cannot spend money. For us, if we do have an incident, then the data will be late. And somebody will have a longer time for coffee in the mornings. That's not so terrible, right? But we responded as it was the end of the world. And that's why I think we kind of gained trust in the organization very, very quickly. And I would say the outcomes and the lessons, 3 minutes, nice. So outcomes and lessons learned, I would say the technical success is one part of the story. So in this case, we built a AWS-based data platform handling really large-scale data at that time. Now that's not a huge data, but at that time it was significant. And I would say we finally, after some problems, we found a way to seamlessly integrate with the gaming platform, with the casino, and not to cause them any trouble. So basically, at the end, they didn't know we are there. And organizational impact is something else. That's I'd say, if you guys are analysts or people dealing with AI now, this is the impact you are aiming for. You are aiming for the organizational impact, and in order to do that, first, there is a lot of education that you need to do. I'm assuming you are well educated on this area, and I'm assuming that the people you are talking to are maybe a little bit skeptical. Maybe they expect something. If they are too optimistic, that's maybe even a bigger problem. That they are expecting something that's not realistic. So that's your problem. That's what you need to solve. But in order to do that, you have to, you have to have your things in order. You have to build trust through transparency. So, what can be done, what cannot be done, what's the reasonable expectation, or if we really want to build that, what do we need for that, and why do we need that? So those are all the questions that go into organizational impact. And and some statistics, because we are data people here. 13% of success comes from delivering a working solution. That's not a lot. That's, you can have your solution, which is amazing. But if people are not using it or it's not delivering what people need, that's not a huge success, right? And the rest of the 92% success comes from the cultural change and trust, because if you really build a solution and people do not trust it, your solution is not worth a dime. So I would say in the times when everything is rapidly changing, even for IT, even for software industry, I think the main thing for us as people who are building stuff is to understand the problem, understand the challenge that we are trying to solve, and educate others and educate, sometimes our, bosses about what's realistic. Do we need that? Why don't we need it? And and I came up with those percentages, they are fake. I just wanted to make a point. But now that I said this, a friend of mine, really good engineer, and I think he always rejects to be a manager, but I think he would be a great manager because somebody comes to him always saying, hey, we need this. And he says, he's so quick, who needs this? How did you work before without this? Maybe you don't need this. And come again when you need it. And he calls it brown dispatching, right? So I would say, I mean, this was a joke, but you kind of need to accept that approach. We all want to work with AI right now. Do we need it? Do you have a use case for it? It's fun. It costs money. That's the problem. So I would say like education, understanding, working on a cultural change, and the real bugger with the cultural change is it takes time. And now with AI, we all want to have something in a month, but the culture will not be changed that easily. So yeah, I think technical aspect of it is a minor problem. The real problem is the education and the organizational change. And to wrap up, build a service, not a system. Why I say this, if you are building something, not a service as a small part of the system, but build a service for people, for somebody to use. Do not build a technical solution, right? So make sure that what you are building is going to be used, and that's your selling point. Earn trust, and by, easiest way of earning trust is sometimes be brave to admit your mistakes. You may not be building, a highly scalable distributed system, but you might mess up some numbers or something. When you realize the mistake, raise your hand, hey, I made a mistake, and here is the correction. That's the proper approach. Cultural shift is the key. I already said that a couple of times. If possible, invest in automation. With AI, that's where it's leading us anyway. And work closely with your customers. I would say in our AI world, and I'm assuming most of you, your customers are probably not the end customers. Your customers are probably going to be people in your team, other engineers and other analysts and other teams, and people who are looking in numbers and analytics. So work with them, and that's a muscle you have to kind of work on to find a way with them. And when you couple these five, you enjoy success as a number 6, and that's it.